Hi, Dion. How are you doing?
Hey, Sarbjeet, great to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
I know, actually, it's my bad a little bit. I should have put that on your calendar, and it's a Friday after the Thanksgiving. So thanks for finding some time
Oh, of
to
course,
talk
yeah.
to me about
I didn't want to
some
miss that.
tech. Yeah, I thought we can talk about Reinvent, like what we sort of can expect from them in next 3 weeks. Now it's all virtual, and in that context, we can talk about other technologies, low code, no code, edge, and other things, right?
That's great.
So
Those are all hot topics.
all hot topics, right? We last time we actually recorded some stuff together was in February, like
Yeah, it seems like
uh,
another decade.
I know, Palace Hotel, the different life when we used to talk in person, right? So, how do you see this sort of whole paradigm shifting the technology consumption during pandemic, which actually changed the way the type of technology I would say we consume, and also the way we consume it in very short period of time. And you work a lot on that, and I also will touch base on your other initiatives that you're doing, work from home, and all that cool stuff you're doing. So, how do you see this evolving?
Well, I mean, I don't think people truly understand the scope of what's happened on the technology side in 2020. So we've had two massive mandatory digital transformations that all organizations had to make. Wasn't optional. All their workers moved. So 46 million US American workers permanently changed where they worked overnight, right, on a 2 week period. And organizations that weren't in the cloud were really struggled with this. I heard this consistently. They were failing their stress tests. Their VPN capacity wasn't anywhere close what they needed to do because they had all this on prem. And then we had the digital transformation of customers. Everyone started staying home and they expected everything to be delivered, and they needed to be able to buy their houses and visit their doctors all through digital connections. And businesses weren't ready for that, so they had to adapt. Like I was talking to one mortgage company, they didn't have the digital signature online. So you had to have everything FedEx to your house, and they were losing customers left and right because they're like, what century are you in? No one manually signs documents anymore, and they had to very quickly revamp their core mortgage processes to handle it. So we've seen this mandatory digital transformation of the workplace out to the cloud, mandatory digital transformation of the customer experience out to the cloud happen, and all organizations have faced it to some degree, but some felt it profoundly, right? So, retailing and restaurants all had to figure out how to deliver to their customers and do so at scale overnight. So, from that standpoint, we saw cloud is it was the elastic fabric that organizations needed to be able to very quickly expand capacity, shift channels, be very nimble. And so, from that standpoint, we've CIOs that I've talked to have just been stretched to their max to make all those shifts happen.
And then in that quick period, and in during this sort of last, especially last 6 months or so, the first 3 months we were sort of like, okay, maybe it will go away, maybe it's short lived, and like, and for last 6 months, like actually, I think that's when things actually really started to pick up, and then we market labeled some stock as pandemic stocks, right? So
Mhm.
Zoom and DocuSign and stuff like that, right? It was flying high and kept on going up and up and up, and it's still, um, depending on what day in the market, like between the vaccines or the news versus like, oh no, the virus is back again, in full force. The shift of money happens between the old sort of guard companies versus the new digital enablement companies. I'll call it, for the lack of a better word. So, how do you see that? Like, do you see, like, I know it's not a, we usually talk tech, not investment and all that stuff, but do you see some hype in certain technologies and it's like overblown in certain areas? And like, will we, let me put it this way, will we go back to normal, if there's anything like that, um, after the pandemic, or after the vaccine comes into the picture, and then these stocks will deflate. I mean, maybe not going into monetary thing, these technologies will take a backstage, or they will keep going.
Well, so I've been really trying to understand that subject, and so I recently gathered together 100 CIOs who I felt were the top 100 CIOs in the industry. It would be the bellwether for what was going to happen. I asked them what their plans were for next year, and I don't think anyone thinks it's going to go back to normal next year. And I also don't think, based on all the conversations that I've talked to, and I've talked to nearly 200 CIOs since all this started, no one thinks it's going to go back to the way it was in February. It's going to go back, right? But not all the way. The cat's out of the bag. I mean, everyone I've to a company, I've heard everyone say productivity is up, right? Despite all the challenges of working from home. Mid managers they're the ones that are having challenges because they're stuck in Zoom meetings all day. But everyone else is more productive because they're not stuck in those meetings, and they have family interruptions, but they don't have as many work interruptions or obligations. And so um, yeah, the big fear that people couldn't be trusted to work from home and they wouldn't be productive, those myths have proven to be just that, not real. And uh, now that companies see, well, I don't have to pay for all that space, I don't have to have all the insurance, and I don't have to have all the requirements of physical space, I can really reduce costs. Well, that sounds really great, plus I get more flexibility. Who doesn't want that? And we'd be able to use digital tools to almost, but not quite, replace the in-person work experience. So those same CIOs said that they are being challenged by most of them are undergoing either a restructuring of IT or a restructuring of their business. And they've had these two digital transformations that they hastily delivered on, and they have to get right in 2021. One of the clearest signals from them was, I need to prove that my digital transformation strategies that we cobbled together and we were forced through this year, we need to mature them and take them into a long-term situation next year. I need to prove that. Automation will be the key way that I deliver more value with less, because I will have less, although budgets didn't get cut nearly as badly as anyone thought. But going back to your point, Sarbjeet, technology has been the solution to almost every major challenge we've had during the pandemic, and tech stocks are up. At Constellation Research, we work with almost every one of the large tech companies as our customers, and we're seeing that they're doing very well. Almost to a company, SAP's had some challenges, but yeah, most of the ones that are selling technology that has anything to do with digital workplace or digital transformation is doing well. And I think that it'll cool down. Do I think the bottom will fall out? No. I mean, the horse is out of the barn, the cat's out of the bag, however you want to say it. We're in a new world now. And everyone's been fast forwarded 5 years in how much they're focusing and investing on digital transformation. I think it's super exciting. It's unleashing all new possibilities.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Definitely, partially, I believe, but I don't know. Like we all don't know like how like
We
there will be
don't
snap.
know.
Yeah,
Anybody tells you that they know what's going to happen next year, it doesn't know what they're talking about. It's going to be very interesting.
yeah. I think even like let's assume that we go like there's no fear of virus a year from now or a year and a half from now. I'm talking about that period. Like at that point, what will happen, right? So I believe we will get this snapback effect. I mean, like snapback to office, going to office, and like maybe I'm in this Silicon Valley bubble.
Why do you think that there'd be a snapback, given that the organizations realize they can save a great deal on their investments in physical office, that they can just leverage the real estate of their workers, and get higher productivity for the same amount that they're paying, right?
Yeah, no, I get that, but I also usually say that in the bigger the system, and the more self healing it is. Um, uh, the ripple effect of not people not going to cities, people not going to office, it has a lot of ripple effects, right, on the restaurant business,
Yeah.
on big cities, and they will lose a lot of revenue. Public transportation is losing a lot of
The
revenue.
big cities were shrinking before this all happened. That writing was already on the wall. Greatly improved broadband in suburban and rural areas is making this possible, right? Just like in 2005, most people could suddenly start watching video online, and YouTube was possible, right? There was this time when suddenly the availability of bandwidth changed everything, and we saw that with the incredibly high prices of cities, but they had bandwidth and they had a lot of other conveniences. This shift has shown that uh, now that we have all this bandwidth and we have things like Starlink coming, with the Elon Musk big you know global satellite network that's going to bring cheap broadband to every single corner of the earth. Uh, People aren't tethered to these big cities anymore, and because of what's happened this year, we've seen all of these amenities now, these new digital services that allow people to get everything they need from home. I visit my doctor through a telehealth connection now. I didn't get that. There was no easy way for me to do that, but the pandemic now assures me I can live anywhere and see my doctor, right? So I think that there's going to be a rubber band effect. We're going to see a pullback a little bit for people who really need to go back. There's certain types of activities where you need that. But I think that this is, I was talking to the CIO of Lowe's. He said, this has been a huge boon. Everyone's building home offices now. So there's these big investment of people creating these spaces now. And now that we have this, we're going to hear that siren song of I can take an hour commute, or I can take a 10-second commute to my brand new beautiful office I just built in my house, right? So it's kind of very interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, I know, I get that. I think I think just to set the sort of context a little bit, like I think we're talking about the sort of work in a digital sense. Means like people who are working at high tech companies, their work, but people working in hospitals and banks and all that stuff, they will keep doing what they do normally. I mean, they will go to the
I don't know
bank, they
about
will
banks,
go.
but obviously healthcare, you can't. There's many kinds of healthcare that can never be delivered remotely, and
Yeah,
that's protected. And we see all the essential workers, right? So police forces, firefighters, all the healthcare workers we're talking about. There's a lot of things you can't deliver remotely, and those folks, their lives haven't changed much anyway, right?
yeah. And on the Um, actually, even on the tech side, I heard a Google exec on CNBC saying that we are calling people back to work. We want people to come back to work for those ripple effect reasons, and also um, productivity and innovation. I think I don't know. I don't think we can call them same thing. Personally, I think people are more engaged and innovative when they're together, like whiteboarding together, close proximity. We all know that innovation happens at the water coolers of the companies, and when you're not doing mundane work or day-to-day work, right? So the ideas come when you're just between meetings kind of stuff, or between your tasks and all. I'm sorry, there's a I think gardener here in the background. It's really loud here,
Well, let me
but
let me
hopefully I will be.
yeah, let me take a shot at that. I mean, Sarbjeet, we see that distributed innovation is what the internet has made possible, right?
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
if you look at open source software, there is there is a type of project that never is not based out of any single physical location, right? Yet open source software is by far the dominant model for how we produce the most innovative technologies in the history of the world. There are tens of thousands of open source projects in a state of maturity, right?
Yeah,
And they're all distributed innovators. They're all people who just use things like GitHub to come together, and everyone tries to get their great features and their great coding ideas and their great design ideas into the code base, right? And it's worked very well. It's revolutionized the industry, and we see that that's been spreading now to other types of work, right? So we see professional services is now doing that too. Everyone, even before the pandemic, the Accentures, the Deloittes were all trying to dramatically decrease physical office space because there were digital collaboration tools like these new like visual creative tools like Mural, which is very, very popular now, is like an unlimited whiteboard that teams can come together and work on.
yeah,
I agree with you. They don't replace the in-person connection, but they're good enough that they're not holding back a lot of innovation. In fact, they're allowing us to tap into people who can never participate before. You see open source contributors from countries that
yeah.
you've never even heard of before,
Exactly.
and so it's incredible.
I
Uh,
know. I totally understand. Actually, I mean, we have been outsourcing bunch of work for last more than 20 years now. right? So, but it kept on increasing the volume of work going to other places. The physical proximity is not a barrier to get the operations, happening. But I am thinking like, how about innovation? Like
Well,
you
see,
need.
here's the problem, Sarbjeet. You bring up a good point. So most of the big tech companies like Microsoft, they've put plans in place so that people can actually stay remote permanently. All right, and if most of the tech companies have said workers can stay home throughout 2021, some of them throughout 2022, and some of them forever. They said we don't really need to come
Yeah,
back.
I see that.
But here's the problem. The problem is the managers and the executives who've been taught to lead the traditional way. They don't know how to lead an organization through a Wi-Fi connection, but that's what they're required to do now. And it's not their core competency, right?
Yeah.
They don't have this, what I call this network leadership skills, where they know how to engage and cultivate a community through digital channels, and then marshal them and direct them again entirely to the digital world. They're going to try and do it through conference calls and emails, and that's not the tools of digital organization right now, right? It's online communities, it's social networks. That's how you connect people, engage and inspire people at high scale. You can do it with millions of people, right? There's some organizations that actually do this, right? And so they're the ones saying, I need you to get back in the office because that's how I know how to lead people. So I think there is some of that. But I think those leaders aren't long for the world because the world is just getting too distributed. Um, Work is too virtual. And so if you're depending on your ability to physically lead people in person, that's just not the way the world is going. That's not the direction we're heading.
Yeah, and actually, yeah, I know I get that. Actually, I think I've said that a few times that cloud does great in bad times and it does great in good times as well, because you do more experimentation in good times. It does good in bad times because you can do without it, right? So I think cloud has
Well,
enabled
it
us to
matches
work.
your business cycle. The cloud allows you to match. You get from it whatever you need. You're not chained to this high capacity data center. You maybe don't need during a downturn. It The cloud naturally stays with you. Whatever your business cycle is, you take what you need from it and nothing more. And it's you just ride that OpEx curve. It's great.
Yeah, the demand curve actually hugs the supply curve. Actually, that's the main sort of layer of the cloud. And going from capex to opex is another huge one. So let's switch gears a little bit. Like I was intrigued by your project you're doing with Citrix. I think you're filming some stuff, work from home. You had your family with you, and then you're showcasing that what the future of work looks like. What is that project?
So it's called the Future of Work Reality Show,
Hmm.
and we're going to do about an episode a week. We filmed 6 episodes so far, and the premise is that Citrix let me use their RV for the first 6 episodes. So I went out to a forest, and we said, "Can we work? Can I live in a little tiny space with my family?" And work effectively? Won't they be too noisy? Won't we have problems sharing the bandwidth? Because the RV actually had a 4G connection inside of it. It was pretty cool.
Uh-huh.
And so we ran into all kinds of scenarios. But the point is, we wanted to show people what happens. Like, is there a way to partition the bandwidth so the kids get whatever's left over, but mommy and daddy get what they need to work? What if I have a cybersecurity incident because these end worker, these end user endpoints that we have at home are not secure and hardened like an enterprise. So how do I go through a fictional cybersecurity incident and then we figure out what the problem is and we resolve it. So are going through all these scenarios. I want to teach people the skills of working and maintaining your own digital office and working remotely. So we have all sorts of things like what the kids are too noisy. So I deploy this audio wall that prevents them from disturbing my meetings. I can't even hear them. And in the episode, they're actually screaming in my ear, and it's not bothering me, and it's not bothering the people I'm meeting with. So I'm showing people that for very little, also these are not large investments. You can completely change the quality of the way that you're working. Use new skills to work better, and adding some technologies along the way. It's mostly skills though, and so each episode explores one key challenge, and we resolve it by the end of the episode. And so the goal is just to teach people we actually have today much better ways of working, but most of us just don't know what they are. So we want to spread that knowledge.
Spread that knowledge. That makes sense. So, where will that air? Like, where will we get access to this?
Well, So I'm VP and principal analyst with Constellation Research, and our CEO is launching a new channel called Constellation TV,
Hmm.
and that we're trying to figure out the date, because the episodes for the Future Work reality show will premiere on Constellation TV. And so that should be, I anticipate the next few weeks we'll start getting the episodes. Then it'll just live on YouTube, and you can binge watch them all you want.
Ray is prolific in that area, so he's doing great stuff. He's on Fox all the time, Fox News,
Yeah, yeah.
Fox
He's on everywhere, NCNBC
everywhere,
and all the other ones. Yeah, it's great.
Yahoo and CNBC too. Yeah, yes, yes. So yeah, that's awesome. Um, and let's touch base like as last sort of segment of our small recording here on Reinvent. What do you expect from them in next 3 weeks? It's all virtual this year. Actually, I will miss that hustle and bustle of a Reinvent, which was great. I think. What do you expect from them? Is it the same normal like previous years?
Hard
Or
to say. I mean, we're finally seeing. I mean, Amazon's still the behemoth, right? So they run on more workloads than everybody else, and almost or more than everybody else combined, right? That's
yeah,
what's
I think
crazy.
so. Yeah.
And they're the one at the top of the hill, and everyone's trying to push them off. And so up till now, Amazon has really courted the developer and the CTO audience, and very effectively, right? And it's been their kingmaker. But they, as a result, they just haven't created a high quality C-level relationship that Microsoft has achieved with Azure, their Azure team, who has a really good connection with CIOs, probably better than everybody else. And Google has now that Kurian has been really focusing on the enterprise and the high end of the enterprise, they've been doing the same thing and finally really connecting with the C-suite. And Amazon's now viewed more as an infrastructure company by executives who don't really view them as a business partner. So I expect you're going to see a lot more, for the very first time, Amazon also really courting the business decision maker. So I think you'll see that as one of the key things that will be talked about more. It'll look more like a Google Cloud keynote, which is very, very non-technical. But we'll see lots of technical announcements too. We'll see lots of edge. We'll see IoT, IIoT. We'll see those are Internet of Things and Industrial Internet of Things. We'll see uh, a lot on outposts. I bet you'll see
Yeah.
announcements with outposts, and related to outposts, we'll see multi-cloud management that will give Google Anthos a run for its money, because that's the big threat. Is every enterprise is multi-cloud now. They're running everyone's clouds, just like they're running 2, 3, 4, 5 ERP systems. And any large organization, by the way, I've ever been in, they're using every relational database that there is, right? It's
Yeah,
just such an amalgam of technology, and cloud is becoming the same. So if you don't make the super play above all the clouds and say, yeah, we have our own cloud, but we help you deal with all cloud, right? Whatever cloud you have, wherever your workloads are, we're going to give you one place to actually manage and move around those workloads. So I expect a major announcement, much bigger than the things that they've done with Outposts, around multi-cloud management to head off especially what Google Cloud is doing.
yeah. I think they need some answer to Anthos, and and multi-cloud is such a um, funny game. I believe that the Hashi Corp is I think outside. I think they're leading the way, like
Totally.
creating a platform
Agree.
to manage the multi cloud. VMware is trying to do that, but we know how that is, and so is Cisco is trying to do that too, right? And then the CA they missed the boat already, right? So and then IBM Red Hat on the other side, like Red Hat used to be the standard around like open source, and that means vendor neutral almost, right? And when
Yeah.
it's open source,
You,
you feel like
you
it's
really
vendor.
want, but who's vendor neutral anymore, right? Who's Switzerland, right? I mean, IBM has a case where they could say, maybe we're a good Switzerland because we don't have a real, we do have our own cloud, but we don't anticipate it taking over the world. We got to make your cloud successful, because that's the only way we can survive, right? Is to make your clouds more successful because you work with us. So I think IBM has a better case than all of them to be Switzerland when it comes to saying, I want to make all your clouds work.
if they let Red Hat lead the pack, if you will, not their own pack, within the IBM sort of umbrella, and we'll see how that goes. I think VMware. I always cite VMware as a great example of like EMC let VMware run their own, company separately, even though it was like a major shareholder in VMware. VMware is Dell company right now. It was EMC company, so but they leave them alone. So they come across as a independent, a piece of the puzzle for the greater market, if you will. You can fit with HPE. You can fit with IBM as VMware. You can fit with
the,
Amazon.
the problem is that it's a Kubernetes world,
Yeah.
and um, it, that's the model that will be used for multi-cloud management. Period. For running our workloads. Period. That's not Microsoft gave up right on Service Fabric mid-year. They started saying we're going to use Kubernetes for our own workloads. I mean, for our own products. So and that's where Google has an ace in the hole because as much as they like to say, oh, other people contribute, they do. I think Google did something like 90% of the actual code commits to Kubernetes.
Yeah.
So that's the ace in the hole. I think that, and you don't see VMware having leadership in that. They should have. I mean, you'd think that they would, or anyone else. This is where if that's the ideal model, why wouldn't you go to the cloud that invented it? That's going to be the real discussion, I think, over the next couple of years. Is what's the one fabric to run them all, right? And bind them. And so that I think is going to define the landscape for the next 2 years.
Yeah, I think there might not be one. Actually, that's a fact, right? There will be multiple, right? So, like, as much as we want, like, single pane, not PAIN, but PANE one,
We'll take a single pane though too, right? I mean, that, but
single pane. We have multiple panes. Oh my God, it's hurting everywhere. Yeah. So, yeah, I think as much as we want that, it may not be reality because of the legacy we have built so far. Like there were some efforts actually to to create this open source based cloud operating system based on OpenStack on one end, and use Amazon's APIs on top of that, right? So the API is consistent. There's a consistency of API for consumption of that technology, which is AWS, which was leader, which still is. Um, so there's a few companies still trying to do that, but then those efforts are small, and they need more money, and the
and there's not big buyers yet. I mean,
yeah.
enterprises are just now feeling the pain. Cisco did this great survey of, I think it was 2,000 CIOs, and they said, "What's your biggest problem?" They go, two things: cybersecurity,
Mhm.
complexity.
Yeah.
And whoever can deliver complexity management to IT, saying you don't need to have specialists in Amazon, specialists in Google, specialists in IBM Cloud, specialists in Alibaba, um, people who are cloud native. You need to have some of them, but you can have a lot less. You need to understand this one management method, one management model that we have, and that's where Google Cloud's number three in the market, and it's a distant number three. But I believe, and we're starting to see they're starting to claw back some of the market share because they now have the dominant model for how we're going to manage multi-cloud. It's theirs. That's their model, right? So I'm very interested. Going to be watching the space with great interest the next couple of years as all this plays out.
Yeah, that might be the last mover advantage kind of thing. So, like they came in a little late, but they know the pain of the industry, and then they can address that. And Google, I see them as very like sophisticated software shop, right? That's how I see them. Like that's my perception of
But
Google
yes,
is.
well, and as a result, the Google Cloud's the purest cloud native commercial cloud that there is.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then on the sort of more like incumbents side, I see VMware as a software savvy shop because I used to work there and have worked at EMC also. I worked at other companies as well, Oracle as well. So I see VMware as they're very software savvy company in the old stack, if you will. And then they
They're
keep
some of the smartest engineers on the planet, if you ask me. their problem, if they have a problem, is that they don't have any skin in the public cloud game. um, what are they supposed to sell to those people, who say, "Oh, great, VMware, take me on the whole journey," and they go, "Well, yeah, but first you got to partner with a commercial cloud, vendor," which is what Red Hat's problem is too, by the way. So they really can't, they can't lead the market by saying we've got the best cloud or anything like that. They don't have it, So
Yeah, yeah. I remember when they acquired us from EMC. They acquired four products for $400 million from EMC. It's kind of funny money, if you will. The same kind of company moving four products there with like about 420 people or so. And I asked the question from our CTO at that time, that like, are we going to put up our public cloud? And they said no with some hesitation, and then they did. VMware did put up a public cloud, and it just lived for like less than a year, and then they said, no, 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 we're not doing this.
it's great. It's
And
a crazy game. I mean, I wouldn't want to, even SAP wouldn't touch that, that game. You have to be prepared to put tens of billions of dollars a year into CapEx to play
yeah,
that game. It's crazy.
yeah, I think they could have sort of partner with the Econex and other folks, but then people don't take you seriously if you don't own the data centers. Then
That
Oracle gets a
just
lot.
said it right there. People don't take you seriously if you don't have the data centers.
Yeah, that is the key, right? So, and by the way, we were number two cloud when I was at Rackspace for some time. We had our data
I
centers.
remember Rackspace was on there, but they realized that unless they got about 10 private equity firms lined up to give them the billions of dollars needed to compete, it wasn't going
Yes.
to happen, right? They had to play a different game.
Yeah, actually, Microsoft was willing to give us a lot of money, invest into us, so we can use their technology to prop up our cloud
Right,
at
right.
Rackspace, because they wanted to compete with Amazon, and we were number two at that point, and our stock was flying high and all that stuff, and a lot of other investors were after us too. But I think what derailed us was OpenStack. We swung the pendulum towards OpenStack, and it went above our heads of our some of our execs, and it just derailed us. And then OpenStack was uh, open sourced, I think, prematurely. It was not mature enough to go into the I usually say like open source, like it was like you left a toddler on the freeway. The toddler doesn't know how to avoid the cars and
Right.
coming at high
No.
speed. He
Well,
got
and
killed.
so much of this business is about timing, right? Like
Yeah, exactly.
Amazon has all this first market advantage, but as a result, they've had to freeze a lot of what they've done. And Google can come in, and Microsoft can come in with more advanced concepts, right? More mature designs of their cloud, where Amazon's got so much legacy they have to deal with. So timing is so critical, on top of having the best ideas and the best delivery and ability to deliver on economies of scale. I mean, I remember talking to Werner Vogels, the CTO of Amazon, and this was probably like getting on 7 or 8 years back. And I asked him how much they had spent cumulative on capex for Amazon, and he had got this faraway look, and I said, I think it's pretty close to 10 billion, which back then was an absurd amount to have spent building, a speculative service that you hope people would use, right? So you have to, yeah, and they squeeze every single penny out of their capex. So you have to hire people that are so good at driving efficiency, uh, any inefficiencies out of your data center, so that you're really running at like 99% efficiency. That takes special talent and special people, which there just isn't a lot of them, right? So it takes lining up and getting a lot of things right. People forget that Scott McNeely actually created the first metered cloud service on network.com.
Yeah.
$1 a CPU hour. He was 1 year ahead of Amazon in launching the compute cloud, but the market wasn't ready for that. He got almost no uptake, right? And so there's there's it's a very, very difficult business to get into. So
Yeah,
I don't blame VMware or Rackspace for not succeeding at all.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, there were companies like way back, like Choreo Systems and all that stuff. They were giving you like your servers on demand and within minutes and stuff like that. But then, as you said, the market was not ready
Already.
at that point. And also, having worked with two cloud providers now, I can attest that like as a cloud provider, you have to know how to run data centers very efficiently, efficiently. Your supply chain management, your racking and stacking, your electricity, how you consume, what do you consume, how
Well,
you
cooling, right? I mean, that's the
cooling.
thing you
Yeah,
have to get right, and the design of your facility, the ground that you choose, the water access to cooling water, and how expensive that is, and what your environmental regulations are. All those really matter, man.
yeah.
A lot of
Like,
factors.
yeah, if you have a lot of money, you can afford to build a data center next to the dam, which more people are doing that. Amazon built a huge data center next to a dam which produces electricity. It's
Almost all major data centers have to be built towards large bodies of water. In fact, Microsoft has now building data centers experimentally that are entirely inside the ocean. Right? It's very interesting.
to keep it cool. Yeah, you got to keep your data center cool. Yeah. Yeah, interesting discussion. Actually, well, I think we'll continue this. I believe that AWS will be little. I mean, to me, it will be a little odd to consume all that content over 3 weeks of period. It'll be like, okay, what was that announcement? Next week, who's talking?
Well, Google Next did the same thing. They spread it out over, I think it was 9 weeks.
Yeah, that was long.
Actually, I thought it was good that you could swing in and get it and absorb it, and then you had to go to your next meeting, but then you can come back and you had time to absorb it. So I think it'll be okay. But yeah, Sarbjeet, if you want to circle around, let's go over what the announcements were after reInvent's all over and what we think about what they came up with.
Yeah, actually, I plan to do that. I will definitely invite you to do the sort of post event sort of catch up. I plan to do like one every week with a few other folks, and then we'll do at the end of 3 weeks, and I'll invite you and a few other folks to talk about it. Like 3, 4 of us. Like I like 4 people on it to be on the grid or 6. I don't like 5 or 3. You know, it just looks odd on the screen. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't mind. The big challenge is, I hate to say it, the big challenge is finding people that know what they're talking about. So yeah, I know you have this great network, so looking forward to that conversation.
Yeah, I have people like you. So I have like people like you and Joe and Tim, and they know what they're talking about. So appreciate your time always, um, and we'll be in touch. I'll put this out there for maybe Sunday evening or so.
Yeah, if you get
People,
it on Sunday, we'll just get it out to the world. I'd like to take this discussion down to Twitter, and there's lots of exciting things going on.
yeah, yeah, we'll keep the discussion up on Twitter, and yeah, we'll go from there. Thanks,
Perfect.
Dan.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Really appreciate it.
Enjoy your weekend.
Thanks. You too.
Thanks.